And welcome to this edition of the Native News Update on this Wednesday, August 8th. I am the host for today's program, Paul DeMain, and many of the stories we usually have here can be read at our website at IndianCountryTV. But today, we're going to go to the Shoshone Bannock Reservation at Fort Hall, Idaho, and talk with correspondent Mark Trahant a little bit about presidential politics. Welcome, Mark Trahant, to this edition of the Native News Update. It's been a little while since we talked, but what I'd like to find out is a little bit about what's happening in the presidential race and update some of our folks up there. And some of the things that come to mind that I'd like to talk about maybe is conventions, money, the vice presidential campaign, and what $25 million from Koch Brothers does for one candidate or the other. So let's start off with your poem of the day. I understand you wrote something this morning or yesterday.
Well, we're interested in who's going to be the vice president nominee. So I wrote, a tight-lipped candidate is no fun. We want to know who's second to run. Will Romney's choice be quite so bold? Or will he be from the governor's mold?
Aha. So
and that really boils down, I mean, it really is whether he's going to roll the dice a little bit and pick somebody like your state's Congressman Paul Ryan, or is he going to go someone really safe like either Tim Pawlenty or Rob Portman?
Pawlenty from Minnesota. What happened to the Florida Hispanic? Rubio, is it?
Also a roll of the dice call, and they say those are the four that they're down to the wire being considered.
Well, Paul Ryan would certainly bring some interesting something. He's been the one that's pushed the budgets and created the budgets and has been very controversial on them, but is kind of like a Tea Party delight to the party, from what I understand.
Personally, I would love to see Paul Ryan be the nominee, because what we would get is a debate about real substantive issues. And right now, we're not debating substantive issues. We have a really important considerations to make as a country about which direction we're headed. And instead, we're debating about really things that have no bearing on this campaign.
Well, is it like what? Like the budget? Both the Democrats and Republicans are against budget deficits. Why do we have budget deficits? Both Republicans and Democrats are for creating jobs. Why aren't we creating more jobs?
Right.
These kinds of things. It's kind of like what's the real argument out there, the process. But when we're talking about that, you're saying with Ryan on the ticket, we're going to be talking about substantive issues, budget, how to fund the government, and where the money goes?
Well, that, and I mean, his original budget, he's kind of backing off of it now, but his budgets took on entitlements. And whether you're from the right or the left, we have a demographic bulge that's huge. And we can't afford to have the same considerations for retirees, particularly for health care. I mean, one of the things that really bugs me is Social Security is really fixable pretty easily. I mean, we just raise the age a couple of years and change a couple of things around, and Social Security is here to stay. But we can't get to where we need to be as a country financially unless we deal with healthcare costs and entitlement. And as long as we spend $12,000 per person on Medicare, we're not in the game. And at least Ryan raised those questions. He does it in a way very different than what I would do, right, but at least he gets it on the table as a discussion item.
And we're talking about Social Security, Medicare, and now the Affordable Health Care Act as an entitlement of some kind in some form or fashion.
Right, but by virtually every good accounting, the Affordable Care Act lowers the cost of health care. And I know the Republicans are saying the opposite, but every demonstratable whether it's Congressional Budget Office or an outside independent firm, has said that it will lower the cost.
Right. And my understanding is that Mitt Romney's health care program was moving in the direction of reducing costs to the healthcare system, right, as well. So right, that'll be an interesting debate to hear when they get to the debates, but they're not going to get to the debates until after the conventions. Tell me what you know about conventions going into them and coming out of them. We've got the Democratic one coming up in late August here.
No, the Democratic's in September.
Okay.
The Republicans in late August. And let me be really blunt, like I usually am. Conventions no longer serve any single purpose other than to see how much boring television they can pack into 3 consecutive nights.
Okay, because everything's decided way beforehand rather than in the back room where they used to smoke cigars, right?
Right. Or the convention delegates used to have a say on different issues, and they used to have a lot of negotiations and back and forth, and it was a political process unfolding. Now it's a 3-day stage show to make their candidates look good and to give speeches. And I think it's easier to read chloroform than to watch it on television.
Okay, and this is where the vice presidential candidate on the Romney ticket is going to be announced somewhere about midway through that process of the Republican convention.
Oh, no, he'll be announced either this week or next week, any day now.
Okay. So
they'll want to have it all set in stone before then.
Okay.
On Thursday of the conventions, when the vice presidential nominee will speak, and vice presidential nominees have a really wonderful job. They get to attack and attack so that the president can look kind by comparison.
They're the ones that are the ones that are the attack dog, from what I remember.
Right.
With Sarah Palin coming out of the pen there for some pretty wild things there. So, but Tim Pawlenty's interesting. We got Ryan right next door. 2 of them from the Great Lakes area as potentials. Where does money play a role in all of this?
Well, this is an unbelievably expensive election, and it's funded by just a few people, thanks to Citizens United Supreme Court case, right, where unlimited amounts of money can be spent by individuals. I was thinking about this yesterday when I was irrigating, and I stepped in a hole and went down about 4 feet into the mud. And as I filled up with water, I was looking at the muddy water, thinking about that's pretty much sums up this election year. It is muddy, it is ugly, it is wet. We've lost the ability to have what I would argue is a reasoned discourse because money on both sides.
And my understanding is polls, whether you're a Democrat or Republican, there's kind of a notion throughout both political persuasions that Citizens United does not serve the country best because there's way too much money involved in this thing now.
Right. Uncontrolled money. I mean, just today, the argument from the supporters of the president that argue that Romney has caused someone to die prematurely because they didn't have health insurance is a stretch of credulity. But by the same measure, the president has had to go through 4 years, basically, of being called a non-citizen. So, right. I mean, it is really ridiculous on both sides.
I was reading this morning that Koch Brothers are launching something like a $25 million campaign against Obama. And right. Oil billionaires, consolidation of the Oklahoma oil fields there, in which at one point Koch Brothers were indicted for stealing money from Indian country, and you can imagine how vilified they are in parts of Wisconsin for their support of the Governor Scott Walker, a Republican, Tea Party Republican. So they're throwing money and millions of dollars in. Are you able to match their donation on the Democratic side?
Well, the interesting thing is it's going to be in just a few states. So if you live in the right state, say Wisconsin, you're going to see those ads every time you turn on the television. If you live in the great state of Idaho, like I do, unless you're watching cable, you won't see them.
Mm-hmm. Polling shows a tight race in some places. Romney has sort of pulled out. Obama has pulled out of a few states simply because they don't feel they need to spend money in several states. What are the swing states that you're seeing that this is narrowing down into?
The 3 big ones right now are Ohio, Florida, and Virginia, to a lesser extent North Carolina and Colorado. Obama's been holding on to a strong lead in Ohio and Virginia, and a few points anyway. And if he continues to hold it, it's probably game over, electoral college-wise.
It'll be interesting because, again, you say electoral college versus the popular vote.
Right.
And is anyone going to get the feeling like the native vote just doesn't make any difference in this, like in Wisconsin, Montana, and other states where the native vote is very imperative to tipping the balance sheet?
I think the native vote will make a difference. New Mexico will be a state the native vote makes a difference. Urban voters in Colorado, native voters will make a difference there, and reservation voters. Colorado is one of those states that the president tide would really like to have. Montana, there the two down races are the most critical and where the Indian vote could help. Denise Juneau is running for Secretary of State, or sorry, running for Secretary of Superintendent of Public Instruction.
Okay.
And she's a Blackfeet tribal member and running for re-election.
Okay.
So having that's really important to her, as well as the U.S. Senator John Tester.
Okay. And do we have any other prominent Native politicians running at this particular point across the country in this upcoming election?
Yes, there's several. There's a tribal chairman running in Michigan for the House of Representatives, and a woman from Kent, a Harvard lawyer, running for Congress from the Navajo Nation. So there's a couple of really interesting races to watch.
Yeah, I was going to say I was going to start taking a look at. Usually, Oklahoma puts out candidates in several places because of the large population there. I think
on the Republican side, Tom Cole is really moving up in leadership. So
we want to watch them on both sides. We need good Native representation from the right, left, and center.
Correct.
If there is a center, there's one independent up there in the Senate, so that is possible. Any last thoughts, and we'll bow out.
No. It's going to be, this is the quiet time, although unfortunately they're slinging mud even during the quiet time. So
we'll keep an eye on it. Any hint about what tomorrow's Twitter poem is going to be?
No, we'll keep watching the news.
Where can we find those things at?
Those are at you can find them on my website, marktrahant.com, but they're also at Twitter. My handle there is @newsrhymes4lines.
We'll take a look at it. Thanks, Mike, for joining with us today.
Thanks, Paul.
And that's going to be another roundup of news from Indian Country. On this edition of the Native News Update, we want to say miigwech for joining with us, and come back again soon.